Greetings. God bless each and every one of you. I pray that God's blessing over your life this morning. It is a beautiful, beautiful Christmas day, and we are excited because we get to celebrate the birth of Christ, who has died on the cross for us this morning. Listen, I'm coming from you from home. Uh, we had someone else using our space in this morning time, and we graciously allowed that, for them to spend that time there. They had a special event, but it still doesn't stop us from really giving an opportunity to celebrate God this morning. And we just wanted to come in this today and just give you a brief little holiday message, and hoping to give you some cheer today, some joy today, some peace and love today, throughout this holiday season, because I know this is a time that can be very difficult and challenging for many of us who are still battling with um, fear, with mourning and loss and death that throughout the year. And it's not always easy during this time. So listen, I just wanted to encourage you this morning and just give you just a moment of blessings and opportunities. And I just pray that this will be something that would be encouraging to you throughout this day. Again, we just are excited for what God is going to do for you this morning. Listen, I'm going to come to you from I'm going to come to you from Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, which we know is the Christmas story. It says, in those days, Caesar Augustus declared that everyone throughout the empire should be enrolled in the tax list. The first enrollment occurred when Quirinius governed Syria, and everyone went to their own cities to be enrolled. Since Joseph belonged to David's house and family line, he went up from the city of Nazareth in Galilee to David's city called Bethlehem in Judea. He went to be enrolled together with Mary, who was promised to him in marriage and who was pregnant. While they were there, the time came for Mary to have her baby. She gave birth to her firstborn child, a son, and wrapped him in snuggly clothing and laid him in a manger because there was no place for them in the inn. So I want to share with you this morning something very simple today, and that is the pursuit of the pressure of pursuit. That's what I want to share with you this morning, the pressure of pursuit. Listen, we realize that in this time, as we gather with joy and gratitude this morning, let us turn our hearts to the humble beginnings of the Savior. This familiar story that we just read is not only a record of Jesus' birth, but also a wonderful reminder of God's sovereignty, faithfulness, and the unexpected ways to fulfill his promises. We realize that the toughest challenges often appear just before we achieve something new. Much like marathon runners find their last strength much stretched to finding the last stretch more demanding than the beginning, Joseph, a descendant of King David, traveled with Mary to Bethlehem because both belonged to David's family line and were required to be counted in the census. You must realize that their journey spanned 70 mountainous miles, presenting a particular hardship for Mary as she was close to giving birth. As I said before, like a marathon runner, the last stretch is more demanding than the beginning. For Mary and Joseph, this trip was simply about fulfilling a bureaucratic requirement, but was also part of a divine plan leading to the Messiah's birth. But still, their main concern at the time of travel was likely focused on following the decree, reaching Bethlehem, and securing a place to stay, unaware of how near they were to a significant moment in history. Now, it is noteworthy that all the prophecies aligned: the city of David, the virgin birth, the humble beginnings, even though Mary and Joseph might not have fully grasped the importance of their actions. But outwardly, it appeared that the events were dictated by the world. Caesar Augustus issued a decree Quirinius was governing in the town so crowded there was no place for them to stay. It was so crowded. Yet unseen to all, God was arranging every detail to accomplish his word. Quite often, like Mary and Joseph, we only recognize how God has guided us when we reflect on the past. Typically, a Roman census did not require people to return to their ancestral towns, because such census was only used for registering individuals for taxation or for military service. But it is plausible, people, that Joseph possessed property in Bethlehem, which may have required him to fulfill his tax obligations in that location. Mary and Joseph didn't know how close they were in participating in God's finality plan. You see, Luke does not specify when Joseph left for Bethlehem or why Mary accompanied him. Matter of fact, it is possible Joseph used the census as a reason to remove Mary from gossip in her village, given that they were pledged, but not fully married until after Jesus' birth. Now, Luke simply states the birth occurred while they were there. And since Mary spent 3 months with Elizabeth, she was at least that far along in her pregnancy when they traveled. So considering this, it could possibly be that she traveled during her third trimester. The specifics of the story often stray, and the circumstances we oftentimes find speculative. But let's put the math together. As they say, the math must math. Though much remains uncertain about the timing of their arrival and even the details of their accommodations, what is really clear is that Mary and Joseph responded faithfully to circumstances beyond their control. They trusted God's guidance even when their path was shrouded in mystery. They knew that they were going to have the risen son. They didn't know where, they didn't know when. They felt that they were close. And because they were pursuing their purpose, it led them to a town that would cause them to fulfill the word of God, even if they didn't know. Their journey, marked by uncertainty and vulnerability, reminds us that obedience often requires moving forward despite not knowing every outcome. In the quiet humility of their choices, God's plan unfolded, not through grand gestures, but through simple, steadfast faith. So as we reflect on the story, we are invited to participate in God's unfolding work, embracing the unknown with trust and hope, confident that even when specifics escape us, God's presence surrounds each step that we take. Mary and Joseph were willing participants. They were faithful in what they knew, but they were not omniscient. They didn't know how it was going to unfold. They just knew that within Mary, there grows the soon-born king. They didn't force the prophecy to fit their actions. In fact, they walked in obedience and humility, and God's plan unfolded, not because they perfectly understood, but because they trusted and moved forward. How often do we, too, find ourselves focused on daily pressures, not realizing we are closer to the manger than we think? How often do we find ourselves knowing that deep down in our belly, God has a plan for our lives, but nothing seems to line up to that? And then we are hit with pressures that are so overwhelming that makes us want to quit. And it keeps moving us, shifting us, and pushing us, and pressuring us, and guiding us, and derailing us, and distracting us, and depressing us, to a point that in certain cases, we get so overwhelmed with the pressure that we explode. And then we find ourselves running with guilt and dismay, thinking that we have destroyed everything God has planned, not even knowing that God needed you to get to a place of brokenness in order for his purpose to be fulfilled. You see, the pressure of the pursuit is not about what's chasing us, but what we're chasing. The pressure of the pursuit is not about the enemy trying to stop us. It is about whether we know or deep down believe we can accomplish and fulfill what God has already called us to fulfill. The pressure of pursuit is not about whether you can do what God says. It's about how willing that you are to accomplish it. And on this Christmas morn, we look at what Mary and Joseph had done that seemed so circumstantial to others that they could try to discredit it. But yet God planned it this way so that they could be fulfilling the scriptures that they were never around to even hear in the first place. Consider this. On that first Christmas, the Messiah came not in a palace, but in a manger, not among royalty, but among the ordinary. Jesus' birth assured us that God steps into our common moments, our uncertainties, and our pressures, and pressures us that God steps into our common moments, our uncertainties, and our pressures. The guest room may be full, but the world may seem preoccupied, but God still loves us and finds a place for us to dwell. As I pause in this quiet of this holy morning, I'm struck by how God's glory enters the simplicity and the struggles of my own life, just as he did in the humble stages long ago in that humble stable where Jesus was born. Reflecting on the miracle of Emmanuel, God with us, I realize the sacred often emerges in my ordinary routines and challenges. Even when I feel unseen or weighed down, I believe Christ steps into my story. He assures me his grace can touch every circumstance that I face. I realize this Christmas that I want to open in even the smallest, most ordinary corners of my heart to him, trusting that God is eager to meet me right where I am and fill me with his peace and his light. So this Christmas morning, let us remember, even when we feel unseen or overwhelmed, God's promises are at work in our lives. Let's realize that the journey may be difficult, the night may be long, the accommodations may be humble, but God's purpose will never, ever be denied. Let us welcome Christ into our hearts again, into the places that feel crowded and weary, trusting that his presence brings hope, peace, and joy. Listen, I know this season has not been an easy one. I know all of our circumstances around us have been challenging. Everything about it has been difficult. Every circumstance has been painful. Every moment has been a question of making crucial and critical life decisions. And I've recognized that some people, they had to drag themselves into this holiday. They literally had to force themselves into the Christmas spirit. I watched an elderly gentleman yesterday telling people in the store, every person he walked by, Merry Christmas. He didn't know them, but he walked by and he said, Merry Christmas. And I observed how stunned some people were, how shocked they were, how off guard they were given because they weren't expecting it. You see, I realized that unfortunately, Christmas has just become another day for us. It's just a moment where we can open up some gifts, criticize the gifts, and then go on with our day. Some no longer celebrate the reason for the season. It wasn't Visa or MasterCard. It wasn't Macy's or Amazon. It was a little infant that came into the world on this day many, many years ago. We don't worry about the date. We don't worry about the accuracy of his birth date. We don't even consider it. We take this time to celebrate that he is, he was, and is to come. We thank that God loved us so much that in a small town in Bethlehem, in a manger, there lies our promise that would soon give his life on the cross to fulfill all of the sins of the world, so that you and I could celebrate this day for more than just the gifts that we buy or the gifts that we receive, but for the love that we can share, the hope that we can bring, the empathy that we provide, and the embrace of a simple hug for those that need it. As you continue on with your day today, I pray that this simple little Christmas message will be something to encourage you, something to guide you, something that will give you hope and joy in this season. I've experienced loss in my life, and every day I still think about where I could be if they were still here. But at the end of the day, I still give God praise, because I know even in my sorrow, in my suffering, in my mourning, there's still hope. When you think there's nothing left, look to the sky. If you didn't put up any decorations, look out in your neighborhood. If you see a tree, a light, a Santa riding a sleigh, still means that there's some Christmas left in you. You want to pursue purpose? Pursue hope. Hope of tomorrow, hope of a joy everlasting, and hope that know that he died on the cross so that you can live. And I encourage you this morning to do one thing, which is my gift to you: live. May the birth of Christ remind us that God is always faithful to fulfill his promise, sometimes in ways we least expect. So I say to you this morning, Merry Christmas, and may you find comfort and encouragement in the presence of Emmanuel, God with us today and always. God bless you all.